What if time isn't the straight line we've been taught to believe? What if ancient civilizations held secrets, forbidden knowledge about bending time itself? Hidden deep within Hindu mythology lie stories so extraordinary, so mind-bending, that they've been deliberately left out of classrooms. These aren't just tales of gods and heroes, they're blueprints for understanding time in ways that defy modern science. Picture this: sages who could travel centuries in an instant, warriors who glimpsed future battles before they happened, and cosmic cycles where time loops back on itself like an endless spiral. These myths don't just challenge our understanding of history, they shatter it. Think about the last time you heard a story about time travel. Chances are it involved a machine, a flashy gadget, or a Hollywood twist. But what if the real secrets of time manipulation were written thousands of years ago, hidden in plain sight? Hindu texts describe realms where days stretch into millennia, where entire universes are born and destroyed in the blink of an eye. These aren't metaphors, they're precise, almost scientific accounts of time's fluidity. Yet for some reason, this wisdom has been labeled too dangerous, too radical for modern education. Why? Because these myths force us to question everything we've been told about reality. You're about to uncover the untold chapters of history, the ones that whisper of time as a river you can step into twice, of destinies rewritten by those who knew its secrets. This isn't just mythology, it's a lost science, a forbidden curriculum that could change how you see the past, present, and future. By the end of this journey, you'll understand why these stories were suppressed and what they reveal about the true nature of time itself. So lean in close, the clock is ticking, but time might just be on your side. In Hindu cosmology, time isn't a straight arrow, it's a wheel, endlessly turning, where ages rise and fall in grand, repeating cycles. The ancient sages didn't just measure time in years or centuries, they mapped it across vast cosmic epochs called Yugas. Imagine 4 great ages, each with its own rhythm and energy, like seasons of existence. The Satya Yuga, an era of truth and divine harmony, gives way to the Treta Yuga, where rituals and sacrifice take center stage. Then comes the Dvapara Yuga, a time of duality and shifting morals, and finally the Kali Yuga, the age we're in now, marked by conflict, illusion, and the slow unraveling of spiritual wisdom. But here's the mind-bending part: when the Kali Yuga ends, the cycle resets. Time doesn't just move forward, it circles back like a serpent biting its own tail. Now zoom out even further. A single cycle of these 4 yugas is just a drop in the ocean of a Kalpa, a cosmic day in the life of Brahma, the creator. One Kalpa spans over 4 billion human years, and within it, entire universes are born, flourish, and dissolve. The Puranas describe Brahma's breath as the rhythm of creation itself. Inhale, and worlds emerge, exhale, and they vanish into the void. But what does this mean for time travel? If time is cyclical, not linear, then the past and future aren't fixed points, they're phases in an eternal loop. This is why Hindu texts speak of sages like Narada, who could traverse between yugas as effortlessly as stepping through a doorway. The Vedas take it even further, suggesting that time is relative, fluid, even personal. In the Mahabharata, the warrior Arjuna enters the realm of Indra, where a single day equals 12 human years. Meanwhile, the Bhagavata Purana tells of King Kakudmi, who returns from a brief audience with Brahma to find his kingdom gone. His loved one's dust thousands of years had passed on earth in what felt like moments. These aren't just poetic metaphors, they're precise observations of time's elasticity, eerily mirroring modern theories like Einstein's relativity. So why were these ideas sidelined? Because they challenge the very foundation of how we're taught to see reality. Linear time is convenient, it keeps us tethered to a single, predictable narrative. But Hindu thought dares to ask, what if time isn't the master but the servant? What if, hidden in these ancient texts, lies the key to bending it? King Kakudmi's story reads like an ancient sci-fi plot, one that bends time itself. The Srimad Bhagavatam tells of this powerful monarch, ruler of the prosperous city of Kushasthali, who sought the perfect husband for his radiant daughter, Revati. But Kakudmi wasn't just any father. He was a king who dared to consult Brahma, the creator of the universe, for divine approval. Together, father and daughter ascended to Brahmaloka, a realm where time operates on an entirely different scale. The journey itself was a blink, just long enough for Kakudmi to present his case to Brahma, who was mid-performance of a celestial dance. But here's where time cracks open, when Brahma finally paused and laughed, revealing that during their brief audience, entire dynasties had risen and fallen on earth. The suitors Kakudmi had considered long dead, their kingdom reduced to legend. The world they knew had aged thousands of years in what felt like mere moments. This isn't just fantasy, it's a staggering parallel to Einstein's theory of time dilation, where gravity and velocity warp time. Brahmaloka, described as a higher dimensional plane, mirrors the scientific concept of a massive gravitational field slowing time relative to Earth. Modern astronauts experience a tiny fraction of this effect. Clocks on the International Space Station tick slightly faster than those on Earth. But Kakudmi's tale takes it to extremes, a celestial realm where a cosmic minute equals millennia below. The implications are chilling. If time isn't fixed, then now is a local phenomenon, not universal. The Puranas hint that advanced yogis understood this, that consciousness, not clocks, might hold the key to navigating time's fluidity. Revati's fate twists the knife further. Returning to Earth, she and her father found humanity diminished, smaller in stature, weaker in spirit, trapped in the darker Kali Yuga. To restore balance, Brahma guided them to the lone surviving sage of their era, Balarama, brother of Krishna, who accepted Revati as his bride after compressing her life force, literally shrinking her to fit the diminished scale of the new age. This detail is crucial. The myth suggests time travel isn't just about movement, it's about transformation. Crossing epochs changes you, forcing adaptation to alien realities. It's a warning woven into the story. Meddling with time doesn't just alter history, it rewrites the traveler. So why was this story preserved while modern schools ignore it? Because it challenges the illusion of control. Kakudmi sought to master destiny by handpicking his daughter's future, only to learn that time humbles even kings. The tale echoes in quantum physics' observer effect, where measuring a system alters it. Perhaps the ancients knew that peeking into time's fabric risks unraveling it. Or worse, that some knowledge once gained can't be unlearned. Kakudmi returned to a world that no longer remembered him, a ghost of a forgotten age. That's the real forbidden lesson. Time doesn't bend for anyone, but if you listen closely to these myths, you might just hear it whisper. Revati's return to Earth wasn't just a homecoming, it was a collision with the impossible. Stepping back onto a world that had moved on without her, she became a living paradox, a woman out of time in the most literal sense. Her story isn't just about the shock of lost centuries, it's about the irreversible ripple effects of crossing temporal boundaries. Think of it like dropping a stone into a river. Except the stone is a person and the river is time itself. The waters close behind her, erasing the world she knew, leaving no path back. This mirrors one of the most haunting themes in modern time travel fiction, the idea that you can't just dip into the past or future without becoming a stranger in your own life. Consider the parallels to films like Interstellar, where Cooper returns to find his daughter aged decades beyond him, or The Time Machine, where the protagonist witnesses civilizations rise and crumble in what feels like days. These stories share a spine-chilling truth with Revati's myth. Time travel isn't just about movement, it's about loss. Every leap forward or backward comes with a cost, severing ties to the familiar, forcing the traveler to confront a world that no longer recognizes them. But Hindu mythology takes it further. Revati didn't just lose her era, her very body had to change to survive the new age. The texts say Balarama compressed her life force, shrinking her to match the diminished stature of humans in the Kali Yuga. This isn't just poetic license, it's a profound observation. Time doesn't just alter the world around the traveler, it alters the traveler themselves. The deeper paradox, Revati and her father set out to control destiny, only to become prisoners of it. Kakudmi sought Brahma's blessing to secure his daughter's future, but in doing so, he erased every possible future she might have had. It's the ultimate cautionary tale. Meddling with time doesn't grant mastery, it dissolves certainty. Modern physics grapples with this too. The butterfly effect in chaos theory suggests that even tiny changes in initial conditions can spiral into catastrophic consequences. Revati's story is that effect writ large. Her brief audience with Brahma didn't just change her life, it erased entire lineages, rewriting history so thoroughly that her homeland existed only as a half-remembered myth. What makes this myth so unsettling is its realism. Unlike sanitized Hollywood endings where time travelers fix their mistakes, Revati's tale offers no reset button. She doesn't rally the people of the new age to restore her kingdom or invent a device to reverse the damage. She adapts because she must. There's a quiet horror in that. The story refuses to romanticize time travel, instead presenting it as a force as indifferent as gravity. You can't argue with it, you can't outsmart it. You can only endure its consequences. This raises a forbidden question. Did ancient seers understand time travel not as a fantasy, but as a dangerous, irreversible technology? The Mahabharata mentions the Brahmastra, a weapon so powerful it could distort time and space, leaving lands barren for generations. The Puranas describe yogis who could enter suspended animation, effectively leaping centuries. These aren't just magical feats, they're descriptions of capabilities with eerie parallels to modern theoretical physics, like cryogenic freezing or relativistic space travel. Yet the myths consistently frame such power as double-edged. For every sage who uses time wisely, there's a Ravana or a Hiranyakashipu who tries to exploit it and pays the price. Revati's story lingers because it forces us to confront the seductive lie at the heart of all time travel dreams, that we could change the past without losing ourselves. But the Kali Yuga, the age she returned to, is defined by fragmentation of knowledge, of memory, of connection. Her fate suggests that time, once fractured, can't be perfectly mended. We inherit her paradox every time we long for a bygone era or dream of fixing history's mistakes. The past isn't a place, it's a story, and once the page turns, there's no going back. The real lesson of Revati isn't about how to travel through time. It's about how to live with the time we're given. Among the most captivating figures in Hindu mythology is Narada Muni, the cosmic traveler who moves through time as easily as others walk through a door. Unlike kings or warriors bound by a single era, Narada exists outside the constraints of linear time, witnessing the rise and fall of civilizations like a spectator at an endless play. The Puranas describe him as a divine sage with a veena in hand and a mind brimming with knowledge, but his true power lies in his ability to traverse yugas, appearing in the past to deliver warnings, or in the future to witness the consequences of present actions. Imagine a being who could sit with Rama in one moment and debate with Krishna centuries later, all while knowing how their stories intertwine across the fabric of time. Narada's journeys aren't just about spectacle, they're masterclasses in the paradox of destiny. In one famous tale, he visits the court of King Prahlada, a devoted follower of Vishnu, and foretells the king's eventual downfall at the hands of his own descendants. The prophecy isn't a fixed sentence, it's a test. Prahlada, shaken but steadfast, chooses compassion over preemptive vengeance, and in doing so, subtly alters the future Narada glimpsed. Here's the twist, the sage already knew Prahlada would make that choice. The lesson: Time isn't a rigid script but a tapestry still being woven, where free will and fate pull at the same threads. Then there's the haunting story of Narada's encounter with Valmiki, the author of the Ramayana. Before Valmiki became a sage, he was a bandit. Narada, seeing the potential in him, didn't just preach. He showed Valmiki a vision of his own future, a life of violence leading to ruin, or a path of devotion leading to immortality. Valmiki's transformation wasn't guaranteed. It hinged on his choice in that moment. This is where Hindu mythology subverts modern time travel tropes. Narada doesn't just observe time, he interacts with it, challenging individuals to recognize their power to reshape their own timelines. But Narada's tales also carry a warning. In the Bhagavata Purana, he once attempted to prevent a war by revealing future tragedies to both sides, only to realize his interference deepened their divisions. The more he tried to fix time, the more entangled the chaos became. It's a profound reflection of quantum theory's observer effect, where merely witnessing an event can change its outcome. Narada's failures remind us that even with knowledge of the future, control is an illusion. Time isn't a puzzle to be solved, it's a dance where every step alters the next. What makes these stories so radical is their refusal to simplify time into neat cause and effect chains. Modern sci-fi often treats time travel as a tool: go back, change one event and reset history. But Narada's myth suggests time is alive, responding to consciousness itself. Yogic texts hint that his abilities stem from mastery over Kala Vidya, the science of time, which treats past, present, and future as fluid states of awareness rather than fixed points. This isn't fantasy, it's a framework that eerily parallels modern physics block universe theory, where all moments exist simultaneously. So why does Narada's lore endure? Because it forces us to confront the weight of our choices. In a world obsessed with predicting and controlling outcomes, his stories whisper a humbling truth. You can't outsmart time, but you can align with its flow. Every decision ripples across ages, seen or unseen. And perhaps that's the real reason these teachings were kept from classrooms, not because they're false, but because they're too powerful. To accept that time bends is one thing. To accept that we're bending it every day, that's a revolution. Narada's greatest lesson about time didn't come from his cosmic journeys. It came from a single, earthbound moment that shattered his understanding of reality. The Bhagavata Purana recounts how Vishnu, the preserver of the universe, once decided to teach the ever-curious sage a humbling truth about perception. As Narada walked through a forest, Vishnu conjured an illusion so potent, it compressed an entire lifetime into the blink of an eye. The sage found himself suddenly parched, stumbling upon a village where a beautiful woman offered him water. One glance, and he forgot his divine purpose, marrying her, raising children, growing old as a farmer, until floods swept his family away. Grief-stricken, he screamed for Vishnu, only to snap back to reality, standing in the same forest, the woman's name still on his lips. The entire saga had lasted less than a second. This isn't just mythology, it's a spine-chilling precursor to modern, simulated reality theories. Think of the film Inception, where layers of dreams feel like decades, or The Matrix, where entire lives unfold in digital seconds. Hindu cosmology suggested millennia ago what physicists now ponder. That time might be a construct, a flexible projection of consciousness rather than an absolute force. Vishnu's illusion exposed the fragility of temporal experience, how memory and emotion can stretch moments into epochs or compress lifetimes into breaths. The terrifying beauty of Narada's ordeal, he didn't just observe this truth, he lived it, carrying the weight of a phantom family's love and loss into his waking existence. The parallels to quantum physics are staggering. In quantum superposition, particles exist in multiple states until observed, much like Narada's illusory life, which was both real and unreal until Vishnu collapsed the waveform. Even more eerie is the Boltzmann brain hypothesis, which posits that a self-aware entity could spontaneously form from chaos, complete with false memories of a past. Narada's experience mirrors this precisely. His mind fabricated a history, relationships, even grief, all within a cosmic sleight of hand, the takeaway. If a god can weave such convincing timelines, how do we know ours isn't equally ephemeral? Yet the myth goes deeper than existential dread. When Narada begged Vishnu for answers, the deity didn't dismiss the illusion as meaningless. Instead, he revealed that the woman was Lakshmi, his own divine consort, playing a role to impart wisdom. Here lies Hinduism's radical lens on reality. Illusions aren't mere tricks, but teachings in disguise. Time's fluidity isn't a bug in the system, it's the system itself, designed to awaken beings to higher truths. Modern simulation theory often stops at, "we might be in a computer," but Hindu thought suggests something more profound. That perceived reality, however fleeting, is a deliberate curriculum for the soul's growth. Narada's story also foreshadows neuroscience's discoveries about time perception. During trauma or epiphany, the brain's clock distorts minutes feel like hours or vice versa. Patients revived from near death often recount seeing their lives flash before their eyes, compressing decades into instants. The ancients seem to have grasped this plasticity of conscious experience long before fMRI machines, framing time not as ticks on a clock but as waves in an ocean of awareness. What makes Narada's tale timeless is its double revelation. Time bends, yes, but so does the self. The sage returned from his vision forever changed, carrying the emotional scars of a life that never happened. This blurs the line between illusion and transformation, begging the question, if an experience reshapes you, does it matter whether it was real? The myth's most unsettling implication. Vishnu didn't just show Narada one alternate life, he hinted at infinite potential timelines, all equally vivid. This resonates with the multiverse theory, where every choice spawns branching realities. But while physics treats these as abstract probabilities, Hinduism personalizes them. Across texts, gods and sages peer into parallel existences where battles ended differently, lovers stayed together, or civilizations never fell. These aren't thought experiments, they're reported experiences, suggesting that advanced consciousness might access what quantum math describes. The warning is subtle but potent. If time is this malleable, then clinging to any single narrative of how things happened is the real illusion. What makes this forbidden knowledge isn't the science, it's the psychology. Accepting time's instability undermines the ego's need for a fixed identity. Narada, after his ordeal, couldn't unsee the fragility of his real life's milestones. Modern schools avoid these stories because they destabilize the linear histories we're taught to trust. But the myth offers a paradoxical comfort. If now is just one frame in a flickering film, then regret and anxiety lose their grip. The past isn't set in stone. It's a story we keep rewriting, and the future, just another present waiting to be dreamed. Among the most startling feats in Hindu mythology is the construction of Rama's bridge, an actual chain of shoals stretching between India and Sri Lanka, still visible from space. The Ramayana recounts how Rama's army of Vanaras, or divine monkeys, built this floating passage across the ocean in just 5 days to rescue Sita from the demon king Ravana. But here's where the myth defies logic. The stones didn't sink. Ancient texts claim the Vanaras inscribed Rama's name on each rock, making them buoyant. Modern geologists confirm the bridge's existence, yet its formation remains unexplained. Could this be more than legend? Could it be evidence of a forgotten science, one that manipulated time itself to alter the properties of matter? The secret may lie in how the bridge was built. The Ramayana describes a ritual where the Vanaras chanted sacred mantras while placing each stone in a precise sequence, as if following an invisible blueprint. Some interpretations suggest these chants weren't prayers but acoustic codes, vibrational frequencies capable of restructuring matter at the molecular level. This eerily mirrors modern experiments with cymatics, where sound waves shape physical materials into geometric patterns. But Hindu texts take it further. They imply that these sound rituals didn't just rearrange matter, they temporarily suspended its natural laws by bending time around the bridge's construction. Imagine a localized time dilation field where gravity's grip weakened just enough to let stones float, like an ancient anti-gravity technology disguised as devotion. Even more provocative is the bridge's endurance. Geological studies date parts of the structure to around 7,000 years old, far older than conventional timelines for human civilization. Yet the Ramayana places Rama's story in the Treta Yuga, an epoch spanning millions of years ago. This discrepancy isn't an error, it's a clue. Hindu cosmology measures time in cosmic cycles, where advanced civilizations rise and fall like waves. The bridge might be a relic from a prior yuga, a time when humanity or beings like the Vanaras wielded knowledge we've since forgotten. NASA satellite images show the bridge's unnatural linearity, with rocks placed in near-perfect alignment despite millennia of ocean currents. Nature doesn't build like this, something or someone did. Modern material science offers a haunting parallel: metamaterials, engineered substances with properties not found in nature, like invisibility cloaks or superconductors. The stones of Rama's bridge behave similarly, defying density expectations. But here's the twist: ancient texts hint that these miracles weren't supernatural. They were applications of a deeper physics where consciousness, sound, and time intersected. The Vanaras didn't just build a bridge, they anchored it across temporal layers, creating a structure that persisted through yugas like a stitch holding eras together. This explains why efforts to dismiss the bridge as a natural formation fall short. Coral reefs grow randomly. Rama's bridge follows intent. The real forbidden knowledge here isn't about floating rocks, it's about time as a tool. The bridge's builders seemingly understood what quantum physicists now suspect, that at fundamental levels matter responds to observation and intention. In Hindu cosmology, Rama's name isn't just a word, it's a vibrational key, a command to reality itself. By inscribing it, the Vanaras may have locked the bridge into a stable timeline, making it resistant to entropy. This challenges everything we're taught about history's linear progress. What if ancient myths are encrypted manuals, records of technologies that harness time's plasticity? The bridge stands as a silent monument to that possibility, whispering across millennia that the past might be far stranger than we dare admit. The Mahabharata's Ashwathama wasn't just a warrior, he was a cautionary tale written across millennia, a man cursed to become time's prisoner rather than its master. Son of the legendary Guru Dronacharya, he was born with a celestial jewel in his forehead granting invincibility. But his true downfall came not from battle, but from a single act of vengeance that shattered the rules of war. When Ashwathama slaughtered the Pandavas' sleeping children in the dead of night, Krishna unleashed a punishment more horrifying than death: immortality without glory, life without end, wandering the earth until the last stars burned out. His jewel torn away, his body festering with unhealing wounds, Ashwathama became the ultimate time traveler, doomed to witness every rise and fall of civilization, forever the outsider looking in. What makes this myth so chilling isn't the curse itself, but its eerie echoes across cultures. The wandering Jew of medieval Christian lore, condemned to walk the earth until Christ's return after mocking him on the way to crucifixion. The Flying Dutchman's ghost ship, crewed by sailors trapped in an endless loop of stormy seas. Even modern fiction's immortal outcasts, from Highlander's Connor MacLeod to Marvel's Wolverine, all bear Ashwathama's psychological scars. They reflect humanity's primal fear not of death but of being left behind, of existing as a relic in a world that keeps rewriting itself without you. Ashwathama's curse strips away the romance of immortality. Hindu texts describe him lurking in forests, howling in pain as his wounds never close, recognized only by the stench of death clinging to him. Pilgrims claim to glimpse him even today, a gaunt figure near Himalayan caves, his forehead still oozing blood after thousands of years. This isn't the sleek, ageless vampire of pop culture. It's immortality as visceral punishment, where time doesn't bring wisdom, only weariness. The Mahabharata hints at the true horror. Ashwathama's mind remains sharp even as his body becomes a prison. He remembers every face, every war, every betrayal, with no oblivion to soften the accumulation of centuries. The parallel to quantum physics, quantum immortality theory is unsettling. Some interpretations suggest consciousness might persist in timelines where death is avoided, creating a subjective experience of endless survival. Ashwathama's curse mirrors this, a consciousness trapped in an ever-narrowing corridor of existence where death is the one door that never opens. Even more haunting are reports from those who claim encounters with him. In 2012, an Indian surgeon wrote of operating on a patient with a festering forehead wound that defied medical explanation, who vanished from the hospital bed after murmuring, "You don't know how long I've waited." Whether myth or metaphor, the story forces us to ask, would eternal life be a gift or a gravity well, pulling you deeper into solitude with each passing epoch? Modern transhumanists dream of conquering death through technology, but Ashwathama's tale whispers a warning. Without the ability to meaningfully connect, to grow, to love, to be remembered, immortality becomes a recursive loop of suffering. The Buddha taught that desire is the root of pain, but Ashwathama's curse inverts that. His pain stems from being stripped of desire itself. He can't even crave release, only endure. This shifts the entire narrative of time travel from adventure to autopsy, not changing history, but being forced to watch it repeat its tragedies like a scratched record. Perhaps that's why schools avoid this story. It doesn't just challenge our obsession with eternal youth, it dismantles the illusion that more time equals more meaning. Ashwathama's true curse wasn't living forever. It was living without context, a stray punctuation mark in a sentence that keeps being erased and rewritten. His myth asks the question we're afraid to voice. If time is infinite, what makes this moment matter? And if the answer is nothing, how do we keep breathing? Ashwathama's shadow stretches across centuries, flickering at the edges of history like a figure half erased from a canvas. Medieval Jain texts from the 6th century describe a towering, emaciated wanderer near the Narada River, his forehead weeping blood, who vanished when monks approached. Mughal court records mention Akbar's soldiers capturing a demon in the 1500s, a man who spoke archaic Sanskrit and claimed to have fought in a war so ancient its heroes were now dust. When interrogated, he recited battlefield details from the Mahabharata with terrifying precision before breaking his chains and disappearing into the night. Even the British colonial archives contain odd reports. In 1842, a district officer in Madhya Pradesh documented villagers' panicked accounts of a cursed sage who appeared during lunar eclipses, screaming verses about cosmic cycles before dissolving into the jungle mist. The 20th century didn't quiet these whispers. In 1976, a team of anthropologists studying tribal communities near the Godavari River were shown a sacred cave where elders claimed to have met the eternal warrior. The researchers dismissed it as folklore until their lead linguist recognized the chants taught by the tribe's shaman as a corrupted but recognizable form of pre-classical Sanskrit. Then came the flood of modern sightings, taxi drivers in Varanasi reporting a passenger with burning wounds who left no seat imprint, trekkers in the Himalayas photographing a skeletal figure watching from cliffs at impossible heights. Most chilling are the medical records. At least 3 hospitals in Jaipur, Kolkata, and Tiruvananthapuram have logged emergency room admissions since 2,000 of patients matching Ashwathama's description, all refusing treatment and vanishing before dawn. One nurse's testimony stands out. His wounds smelled like monsoon earth, but his eyes were worse. They weren't old, they were endless. So why does mainstream education scrub these accounts from textbooks? Because Ashwathama's existence threatens the foundational myth of linear progress. If a man from an epic supposedly written 3,000 years ago still walks among us, it collapses the neat division between history and legend. Academic institutions dismiss these sightings as mass hysteria or elaborate hoaxes, but the consistency across eras is unsettling. Medieval sources couldn't have known about 20th century medical terminology, yet all describe identical symptoms: unhealing forehead wounds, supernatural strength, and knowledge of long-dead languages. The real issue isn't whether Ashwathama lives, it's what his curse implies about time itself. His immortality suggests the Mahabharata wasn't just a story, but a chronicle of a forgotten epoch when humanity, or something beyond it, wielded power over temporal laws. The suppression follows a pattern. Colonial education systems systematically severed Indians from their cosmological roots, recasting epics as mere mythology rather than potential ethno-historical records. Modern curricula inherit this bias, treating time as a one-way street where the past is safely dead. Ashwathama shatters that illusion. His alleged presence forces us to confront uncomfortable truths. That ancient texts might contain encrypted histories, that time may loop rather than march, and that some knowledge is excluded not because it's false, but because it's too disruptive to the dominant narrative. When pilgrims still leave bundles of herbs and fresh bandages at remote shrines for the lonely one, they're not just keeping superstition alive, they're preserving a thread that connects our world to something far older and stranger than textbooks dare admit. The Mahabharata's astras weren't just weapons, they were cosmic keys capable of bending reality itself to the wielder's will. Take the Brahmastra, described as the ultimate divine weapon, forged from the primal energy of creation. When unleashed, it didn't merely destroy, it unraveled the fabric of time and space around its target. Ancient texts depict its effects with eerie precision. Entire regions rendered barren for generations, rivers flowing backward, and warriors aging centuries in moments. This isn't just mythological exaggeration, it's a chillingly accurate portrayal of what modern science calls a localized space-time rupture, where gravity and time distort under extreme energy. The parallels to nuclear weapons are undeniable. Like the Brahmastra, a thermonuclear blast creates a fireball hotter than the sun, emits blinding light, and leaves behind radiation that poisons the land for decades. But the Mahabharata goes further, suggesting these astras didn't just level cities, they altered the very laws of physics within their blast radius. Then there's the Pashupatastra, a weapon so potent even the gods feared its misuse. Unlike conventional arms, it couldn't be aimed in the traditional sense. Instead, it attuned itself to the target's karma, striking with metaphysical precision. The epic recounts how Arjuna, the greatest archer of his age, hesitated to use it even in dire straits, not because of its destructive power, but because its effects were unpredictable across time. Victims weren't just killed, their past and future existences were said to unravel, as if the weapon snipped their lifeline across multiple timelines. Compare this to sci-fi's most terrifying superweapons, Star Trek's red matter, which collapses space-time into black holes, or Doctor Who's moment, which erases entire species from history. The Pashupatastra mirrors these concepts with unsettling clarity, hinting that ancient seers envisioned quantum erasure millennia before Schrödinger's cat. But the most haunting astra might be the Narayanastra, a weapon that multiplied its force based on the resistance it faced. When King Bhagadatta launched it against the Pandava army, every arrow shot to deflect it spawned 1,000 more, turning defense into suicide. The only survival tactic, complete surrender, laying down arms and submitting to its will. This bizarre behavior echoes modern AI-driven weapons systems that adapt to countermeasures in real time, or theoretical smart matter that restructures itself in response to threats. The Narayanastra's intelligence wasn't artificial, it was divine, drawing on cosmic awareness to outthink its opponents. What chills the spine isn't the weapon's power, but its eerie sentience, a quality shared by dystopian tech like Skynet or Marvel's Ultron, but described in a text older than the Roman Empire. The terrifying common thread: these astras weren't just tools of war, they were violations of natural order. The Mahabharata repeatedly warns that their misuse could collapse the cycle of Yugas, hurling the world into premature cosmic winter. When Ashwathama irresponsibly fired the Brahmastra at the Pandavas' unborn heir, the backlash cursed him with immortality, but the text suggests something far worse nearly happened: a fracture in time's cyclical rhythm, freezing the universe in an unnatural stasis. This mirrors modern doomsday fears: not just nuclear winter, but hypothetical vacuum decay, events where a single quantum misstep could rewrite the laws of physics universally. The epic's insistence that these weapons required not just skill but moral purity to wield takes on new weight in an age where a single misaligned algorithm or rogue AI could trigger global catastrophe. Perhaps the most provocative detail lies in the astra's activation. Unlike sci-fi gadgets with buttons and levers, these weapons responded to mantras, sound vibrations encoded with specific frequencies. Modern directed energy weapons like sonic cannons or microwave arrays show how sound can physically impact matter, but the astras suggest next-level acoustics, resonant frequencies capable of harmonizing with spacetime's fundamental vibrations. NASA studies on quantum acoustics reveal how sound waves can influence particles at subatomic levels. Now imagine that principle scaled up: ancient mantras not as prayers, but as sonic keys twisting the locks of reality itself. The Brahmanas, Vedic texts predating the Mahabharata, describe elaborate rituals where precise chants could call down celestial forces. Were these the user manuals for time-warping arsenals? The ultimate tragedy of these weapons isn't their existence, it's their loss. Post-Mahabharata, the texts claim the knowledge of astras faded, deemed too dangerous for a descending age. In our era of nuclear brinkmanship and unchecked AI development, that warning screams across millennia. The ancients didn't just foresee weapons of mass destruction. They envisioned weapons of mass distortion, tools that didn't just kill bodies, but unraveled the very threads of cause and effect. And buried in their cautionary tales lies a question we've yet to answer. Can any civilization wield universe-altering power without becoming, like Ashwathama, doomed to wander the wreckage of its own hubris? Vyasa, the legendary sage who compiled the Mahabharata, didn't just document history. He seemed to peer through time itself, etching warnings about our current age with unnerving precision. The Vishnu Purana and Bhagavata Purana contain his chilling prophecies about the Kali Yuga, the era we inhabit now, a time where rulers would exploit rather than protect, where spiritual wisdom would shrink into hollow rituals, and where truth itself would become a commodity sold to the highest bidder. But here's the unsettling question: were these truly prophecies or something far more radical? What if Vyasa didn't predict the future but witnessed it? Consider the details. His descriptions of the Kali Yuga read less like vague omens and more like first-hand accounts. He writes of metals that think, machines with artificial intelligence, cities in the sky, air travel or space habitats, and men who claim to own the Earth's breath, carbon credit traders or fossil fuel magnates. Even the social decay he foretold: families fracturing, greed surpassing virtue, leaders devoid of wisdom, mirrors modern anxieties with surgical accuracy. This isn't the broad, symbolic language of typical prophecy. It's the granular specificity of someone who's walked through a future age and returned haunted. The Mahabharata offers clues that Vyasa's knowledge wasn't supernatural insight but temporal access. He's depicted as interacting freely with gods and sages who traverse yugas like Narada. In one lesser-known episode, Vyasa meditates so deeply that his consciousness slips between the strands of time, glimpsing epochs beyond his own. When his disciples beg him to describe what he saw, he trembles, whispering of an age where fire burns without fuel and chariots move without horses. The ancient text clarifies this wasn't a vision granted by divine favor. It was a yogic technique, a deliberate unraveling of temporal perception. Modern theoretical physics offers a startling parallel. The block universe theory suggests past, present, and future all exist simultaneously, like frames in a film strip. Consciousness, according to some interpretations, might move through these frames, creating the illusion of linear time. If Vyasa mastered yogic practices that altered his consciousness's relation to time, akin to advanced meditation inducing quantum observer states, then his prophecies take on a new light. They wouldn't be guesses, but reports from a mind that briefly stepped out of time's river to observe its flow from the bank. The implications ripple outward. Vyasa encoded these glimpses not just in scriptures but in architecture. The celestial observatories he designed, like the one at Ujjain, align with star positions that won't recur for 26,000 years, a timescale matching the precession of equinoxes. How could a man from 5,000 years ago know where stars would be in our era unless he'd mapped time itself? Even his literary technique hints at temporal mastery. The Mahabharata's nonlinear narrative flashbacks within flashbacks, characters recounting events they couldn't have witnessed, mirrors modern hypertext or quantum storytelling where cause and effect aren't fixed. Yet the most haunting evidence lies in what Vyasa chose not to say. His texts describe the Kali Yuga's horrors but abruptly stop short of detailing its end. When pressed, he cryptically states that the wheel turns when the worthy cease counting. This aligns with quantum theory's observer effect. The act of measuring a system can alter its outcome. By refusing to fully disclose the future, Vyasa may have been obeying a temporal prime directive, aware that some knowledge, once implanted in humanity's collective consciousness, could rewrite destiny itself. The Kali Yuga's defining trait, according to Vyasa, isn't its chaos but its forgetfulness, that we dismiss his warnings as myth. Perhaps that's the ultimate test of this age, whether we recognize that the greatest time travelers left their journals masquerading as scripture, waiting for an era advanced enough to decipher them not as poetry but as maps. The Siddhas weren't just spiritual adepts, they were time's architects, yogis who cracked the code of the ages and left their secrets buried in cryptic verses and cave paintings. These South Indian mystics, whose name literally means the perfected ones, allegedly wielded techniques so potent they could step outside the flow of time itself. Their methods weren't recorded in mainstream scriptures but hidden in palm leaf manuscripts called Siddha Veda, accessible only to initiates who'd undergone decades of grueling preparation. The reason: these weren't just meditation techniques, they were temporal engineering, blueprints for consciousness to navigate the fourth dimension like a ship cutting through waves. One such practice, Kalavidya, involved visualizing time as a spiral rather than a line. Advanced practitioners would enter a trance state so deep, their metabolic processes nearly halted heartbeat, slowing to 1 pulse per hour, breath becoming imperceptible. Ancient Tamil texts describe this as stepping into the gap between moments, where subjective time stretched infinitely while the external world rushed past like a river in flood. There are accounts of siddhas like Bogga, who supposedly lived for thousands of years by cycling between these suspended states, emerging periodically to document civilizations rising and falling. Sound familiar? It's eerily similar to modern cryogenic freezing or astronaut hibernation for interstellar travel, except the siddhas achieved it through breath control alone. But the most forbidden technique was Surya Vijayan, the science of the sun. Manuscripts fragmented across remote monasteries suggest siddhas could harness solar energy not just physically but temporally. By aligning their bodies' rhythms with precise solar cycles, breathing at exact angles to sunlight at specific latitudes, they allegedly created localized time dilation fields. The 13th century text Bogga 7000 describes a disciple entering a sunlit stone chamber for what felt like an afternoon, only to emerge with a beard grown to his knees, his village reduced to ruins centuries gone. This mirrors quantum physics. Time crystals are theoretical structures where particles move in repeating patterns without energy loss, potentially creating closed time-like curves. Why was this knowledge suppressed? The answer lies in the Siddha's own warnings. Their texts repeatedly stress that time manipulation without corresponding spiritual evolution is a recipe for existential catastrophe. The Kriya Yoga Sutras detail cases where unprepared practitioners became trapped in temporal loops, reliving their traumas endlessly like ghosts stuck between worlds. Others allegedly triggered cascading paradoxes, villages vanishing from history because a yogi accidentally prevented their ancestors meeting. The Brahmin councils and later colonial rulers didn't ban these teachings because they were false, but because they were too real. Imagine handing nuclear codes to toddlers. That's how the ancients viewed giving time-altering techniques to minds still ruled by ego and desire. The Siddha legacy haunts modern science. Their descriptions of time atoms, Kala Anu, resemble string theories, Chronon's hypothetical quantum time units. Their insistence that consciousness can alter time's flow finds echoes in the delayed choice quantum eraser experiment, where observing a particle seems to retroactively change its past behavior. Even their warnings feel prophetic in an age racing toward AI singularity and genetic editing. Perhaps the greatest tragedy isn't that these techniques were hidden, but that we stopped believing they ever existed. The Siddhas didn't just master time, they understood it as the ultimate teacher, revealing that every moment contains all moments if only we could learn to see. Imagine being trapped in a dream where the universe dies in your arms over and over and over. The Markandeya Purana spins this nightmare into reality through the story of its namesake sage, a boy destined to witness time's most terrifying secret. That creation isn't a one-time event, but a breath held and exhaled infinitely. While meditating by a river, young Markandeya suddenly finds himself floating in a void, clutching the infant form of Vishnu as cosmic winds shred galaxies like autumn leaves. Stars gutter out, oceans evaporate, the very fabric of space dissolves until, with a gasp, the universe surges back to life, lush and vibrant as if nothing had happened. Then the cycle repeats and repeats. This isn't just a myth, it's a chillingly precise allegory for the eternal return, the philosophical idea that existence loops endlessly, with every moment destined to recur verbatim across infinity. What makes Markandeya's vision so unsettling isn't its scale, but its intimacy. Hindu cosmology often describes cosmic cycles in grand abstractions, kalpas, manvantaras, the breath of Brahma, but here we experience apocalypse through human eyes. The text lingers on visceral details, the sage's fingers turning blue from clinging to Vishnu as temperatures plunge to absolute zero, the deafening silence between universes when even time stops ticking. This transforms philosophical concepts like Nietzsche's eternal recurrence from thought experiments into visceral trauma. Nietzsche asked if we could endure reliving our lives identically forever. Markandeya lived it, discovering that even gods aren't exempt from the wheel. The parallels to modern physics are staggering. The Purana describes each cosmic dissolution not as chaos, but as a return to a quantum ground state, a primordial ocean where all distinctions melt away, mirroring the hypothesized heat death of the universe. Then, improbably, a new Big Bang erupts. Current cyclic universe models, like Roger Penrose's conformal cyclic cosmology, suggest something eerily similar. That black hole evaporation seeds future universes in an endless loop. But the Purana goes further, proposing that each iteration isn't identical. Markandeya notices subtle differences between cycles, a mountain slightly taller here, a river flowing west instead of east, implying cosmic evolution across rebirth. This aligns with Lee Smollen's theory of cosmological natural selection, where each new universe inherits tweaked physical constants from its predecessors. The genius of the myth lies in its narrative structure. Unlike linear apocalyptic tales, Markandeya's ordeal has no climax or resolution, just relentless recurrence. The text deliberately numbs readers with repetition, mirroring the protagonist's existential fatigue. By the seventh cycle, even the grandeur of creation feels monotonous, driving home the true horror of eternity, not destruction but inevitability. This flips modern time loop stories like Groundhog Day on their head. Phil Connors breaks his cycle through self-improvement, but Markandeya escapes only when Vishnu, the personification of time itself, takes pity and pulls him out. The message is brutal. No amount of wisdom or willpower can stop the wheel from turning. Salvation comes not from conquering time, but from being seen by it. Hidden in this narrative is a radical critique of human ambition. Ancient India's ascetics sought moksha, liberation from rebirth, yet Markandeya's vision suggests even the cosmos can't escape its cycles. The universe's reset button mocks our petty struggles for immortality. Perhaps that's why this story was preserved while Western traditions favored linear eschatology. Christianity's final judgment and secular progress myths both promise an endpoint, a culmination. Hindu thought offers no such comfort. Time isn't a story with meaning wrung from its conclusion. It's a pattern without a purpose, beautiful precisely because it owes us nothing. Modern culture grapples with these ideas through dystopian fiction and climate anxiety, but the Purana's genius is its ambivalence. Markandeya isn't left traumatized by his vision, he's enlightened. Watching existence reboot repeatedly shatters his illusion of separateness, revealing himself as both observer and participant in the dance. That's the forbidden wisdom at the story's core. To know time is cyclical isn't a curse, but an invitation to stop clinging. The universe will end, it will begin again, and in the spaces between, if you're very still, you might just hear eternity laughing. High in the snow-capped peaks of the Himalayas, where the air grows thin and the stones whisper of forgotten epochs, stands Kedarnath, one of Hinduism's holiest shrines. But beneath its ancient walls lies a secret far older than the temple itself. Local priests and wandering sadhus have long spoken of a concealed chamber beneath the sanctum, a doorway not just to another place but to another time. Pilgrims who have braved the treacherous ascent share eerie accounts. The sound of distant chanting in languages no scholar recognizes, the sudden scent of flowers blooming out of season, or the fleeting glimpse of figures dressed in archaic garments vanishing around corners that don't exist. The most chilling legend tells of a mystic who entered the inner sanctum in the 19th century and emerged moments later, his hair white, his body withered with age, babbling about kingdoms that had risen and fallen in what felt like hours. What makes these stories more than just campfire tales? The temple's very architecture hints at something beyond mundane understanding. Kedarnath's foundation stones bear intricate carvings of spirals and concentric circles, symbols found in ancient cultures worldwide representing portals or dimensional gateways. Even more perplexing are the temple's acoustic properties. Certain niches amplify sound in ways that defy physics, creating echoes that linger seconds longer than they should, as if sound itself is struggling to escape a temporal drag. Modern archaeologists dismiss these anomalies as natural cavern formations, but the region's oral traditions insist the temple was built intentionally over a pre-existing vein of time, a geological oddity where the fabric of reality grows thin. The controversy deepens when examining historical records. 18th century British surveyor Charles Crawford wrote of encountering a group of monks near Kedarnath who described performing rituals to stabilize the flow of time around the temple. His journals, buried in colonial archives, note their claim that certain mantras could open the path between ages. Even earlier, the 16th century Bhakti poet Surdas referenced Kedarnath as the place where yesterday and tomorrow meet, a line scholars long assumed was metaphorical until recent discoveries. In 2012, geological surveys revealed a massive, naturally occurring quartz deposit beneath the temple, a mineral known for its piezoelectric properties and theorized in quantum experiments to influence localized spacetime. Yet mainstream academia still labels these accounts as superstition. The skepticism stems partly from colonial-era policies that systematically recategorized India's temporal sciences as myth. British administrators, steeped in linear Victorian views of history, purged references to cyclical time or interdimensional travel from official records, recasting them as primitive folklore. Modern scientists compound the dismissal, arguing that time portals violate thermodynamics, but their objections crumble when faced with cutting-edge physics. The work of Nobel laureate Roger Penrose on conformal cyclic cosmology suggests the universe might recycle itself in endless loops, a concept eerily mirroring the Hindu notion of cosmic dissolution and rebirth. Even more provocative are recent experiments with quantum entanglement, where particles influence each other instantaneously across distances, hinting that our understanding of causality may be fundamentally flawed. The real reason these stories unsettle us isn't their impossibility, it's their implications. If time isn't the unshakable constant we've built our lives upon, then history itself becomes fluid. Empires could have risen and vanished in gaps between what we call recorded time. Civilizations might have mastered temporal navigation only to be erased by its paradoxes. Kedarnath's whispers suggest a terrifying truth, that our linear chronology is a comforting illusion, and somewhere beneath those age-old stones, the past and future are still breathing. Tantric traditions hold some of Hinduism's most guarded secrets methods, not just for transcending the self, but for bending time itself. Among these, the Kolchakra ritual stands apart, a ceremony so potent it's said to unravel the very fabric of chronology. Unlike conventional worship, this practice doesn't just honor the divine. It manipulates the flow of moments, compressing hours into seconds or stretching seconds into eternities. Initiates speak of entering a state where past, present, and future swirl together like ink in water, where the boundaries between then and now dissolve entirely. The ritual's core lies in the precise alignment of breath, mantra, and geometry yogic postures that map onto celestial patterns, chants tuned to frequencies believed to resonate with time's underlying structure. The mechanics of Kolchakra defy linear explanation. Ancient texts describe participants circling a sacred diagram, the yantra, in rhythms mirroring the orbits of planets. With each revolution, their consciousness allegedly sinks with deeper layers of temporal reality, like a needle finding the groove of a spinning record. Some accounts claim adepts emerged from the ritual to find candles still burning with fresh wicks, though their subjective experience spanned days. Others report glimpses of future events, hints of wars, births, or natural disasters that later unfolded exactly as foreseen. These aren't just metaphysical claims, they echo modern experiments in quantum time perception, where altered states of consciousness can distort a subject's sense of duration. Why has academia sidelined these practices? The reasons are as political as they are philosophical. Colonial scholars dismissed Tantra as occult superstition, a label that stuck despite India's own elite often marginalizing these traditions for challenging orthodox power structures. Unlike mainstream Vedic rituals which emphasize social order, Tantra's time-bending techniques empower the individual, a dangerous idea in hierarchical societies. The Kolchakra ritual's exclusion from academic discourse isn't accidental, it's systemic. Western universities historically favored Sanskrit texts that aligned with Judeo-Christian linear time models, while Tantra's cyclical, fluid temporality was relegated to anthropology's primitive belief bin. Yet the suppression runs deeper than cultural bias. Time manipulation threatens the foundational myths of modern governance. If past and future are malleable, how can laws or historical narratives claim authority? The British Raj actively censored tantric texts, fearing their implications imagine rebels who could vanish from prisons by slipping into alternate timelines. Even today, research into chronal practices faces funding blacklists, dismissed as pseudoscience despite parallels in theoretical physics. The CIA's declassified Stargate files reveal Cold War experiments with remote viewing and temporal perception, proving state interest in these concepts so long as they remained military secrets rather than public knowledge. Tantra's real heresy isn't its methods, but its democratization of time's secrets. The Kalchakra ritual requires no expensive technology, just disciplined training, a roadmap for liberation accessible to anyone willing to walk its razor's edge. This subversion may explain why its manuscripts were encoded in twilight language, their true meanings hidden behind layers of symbolism. To the uninitiated, the texts read like poetry. To adepts, they're precise equations for navigating time's currents. Modern physics inches toward similar truths. The block universe theory treats time as a landscape where consciousness moves, not a river carrying us helplessly forward. Quantum entanglement shows particles communicating instantaneously across distances, a hint that our linear causality might be provisional. Tantrics would nod knowingly. Their rituals treat time as a medium to be shaped, not a force to be obeyed. The tragedy isn't that these practices were forgotten, but that we banned them from the laboratory of human inquiry, leaving our understanding of time perilously incomplete. The enduring power of Kalchakra lies in its challenge. If time is truly a construct, who gets to control its construction? The answer, whispered in tantric caves for millennia, might rewrite not just history, but the future we're racing toward. Deep beneath the Earth's surface, Hindu cosmology describes Patala Lok, a shadowy underworld where time twists and bends like roots gnarled in dark soil. Unlike the linear chronology we experience, this nether realm operates under its own erratic rhythms, where a single day might stretch into centuries or collapse into mere seconds. The Vishnu Purana paints it as a labyrinthine domain of 7-layered worlds, each governed by different temporal laws. The deeper one descends, the more distorted time becomes, until at the lowest level, even the gods hesitate to tread for fear of losing their place in the cosmic order. This isn't just a flight of mythological fancy, it's a concept echoed across ancient cultures. The Greeks spoke of Hades, where heroes like Orpheus entered for a day only to return years later. Norse mythology describes Niflheim, a frozen underworld where the dead experience time as an endless twilight. The Mayans believed Xibalba, their underworld, inverted earthly time, with nights lasting years and days passing in breaths. These parallels suggest a shared intuition that beneath our feet lies not just rock and magma, but a realm where time's rules unravel. Modern physics offers a startling explanation. Einstein's theory of general relativity predicts time dilation in strong gravitational fields like those near a planet's core. The deeper you go, the more mass presses inward, slowing time relative to the surface. GPS satellites already account for this effect. Their clocks tick slightly faster in orbit than on Earth. Now imagine that distortion amplified 1,000-fold in a place like Patala Lok, where myth and geology collide. The Bhagavata Purana even describes certain subterranean realms illuminated by glowing gems rather than sunlight, a detail that aligns uncannily with bioluminescent ecosystems found in deep caves, where life thrives outside solar time. But Patala's true enigma lies in its inhabitants, the Nagas, serpentine beings said to possess advanced knowledge of time manipulation. Texts like the Mahabharata depict them guarding celestial weapons and elixirs that defy aging, hinting at an underground civilization mastering temporal science. Some regional folktales claim certain cave systems in India, like the Bora caves or the Ajanta Ellora complex, conceal hidden entrances to these realms. Explorers report disorientation, watches malfunctioning, and eerie voices whispering from the rock phenomena that mirror modern accounts of time slips in places like the Bermuda Triangle or Skinwalker Ranch. The implications are profound. If Patala Lok exists as a physical or metaphysical reality, it could rewrite our understanding of history. What if ancient underworld journeys were literal experiments in time travel? The Egyptian Book of the Dead describes souls navigating subterranean tunnels where hours bend like reeds, while Aboriginal Australian Dreamtime stories speak of ancestors reshaping the world from underground songlines. These narratives all converge on a single, spine-tingling possibility: that the Earth's crust isn't just our foundation, it might be a membrane separating us from alternate timelines. Perhaps that's why these myths were suppressed. Colonial powers dismantled indigenous cosmologies that challenged linear progress, labeling them primitive. But the resurgence of interest in subterranean anomalies, from Bolivia's Gateway of the Gods to Russia's mysterious Kola superdeep borehole, suggests we're circling back to an ancient truth. Time isn't uniform, it breathes, it pools, and somewhere in the darkness below, it might just be waiting for us to listen. Beneath the waves off the coast of modern Gujarat lies a mystery that blurs the line between myth and history: the sunken city of Dwarka. According to ancient texts, this wasn't just any metropolis, it was Krishna's celestial kingdom, a dazzling expanse of gold and marble that vanished into the sea the moment its divine protector departed Earth. The Mahabharata describes its sinking with eerie specificity: waves swallowing palaces, streets flooding in an instant, as if the ocean itself had been waiting to reclaim what belonged to time. But what if this wasn't merely poetic metaphor? Underwater archaeologists have spent decades probing these waters, uncovering structures so ancient and precise, they force us to reconsider everything we've been taught about civilization's timeline. The discoveries are staggering. Marine expeditions led by institutions like India's National Institute of Oceanography have mapped massive stone walls, grid-patterned foundations, and artifacts dating back at least 9,000 years, far older than conventional history allows for advanced urban settlements. Among the most compelling finds are a stone anchor with a triangular hole, identical to those described in Harappan-era texts, and pottery shards bearing marks that match Vedic sacrificial symbols. Even more tantalizing are the sonar images revealing a series of geometric formations extending nearly half a mile into the deep, their right angles and symmetrical layouts screaming intentional design rather than natural rock formations. Skeptics argue these could be geological quirks, but then there's the Devaraka stone, a recovered artifact inscribed with characters from a script so old it predates known writing systems in the region by millennia. The real controversy lies in the dating. Carbon analysis of submerged wooden remnants points to a time frame around 7,500 BC, a period when mainstream academia insists humans were primitive hunter-gatherers. Yet Dwarka's descriptions in the Puranas align uncannily with these findings: a fortified island city with sophisticated drainage systems, multi-story buildings, and a grand gateway facing the setting sun. The texts even note its strategic position at the confluence of the Gomati River and the Arabian Sea, exactly where the ruins now lie. This isn't just coincidence piling up, it's a puzzle demanding we rewrite our understanding of prehistory. But the most chilling detail comes from the Bhagavata Purana's account of Dwarka's demise. As Krishna's soul left his body, the city didn't merely flood, it folded. The text describes a sudden temporal collapse where time quickened like a river in monsoon, aging buildings centuries in moments before the waves consumed them. Modern geologists studying the site have noted anomalies in sediment layers that suggest rapid subsidence, possibly triggered by a seismic event. Yet local legends insist the disaster wasn't natural. They speak of a time weapon activated in grief after Krishna's death, a final act of devotion that erased Dwarka from chronology itself to prevent its desecration by invaders. The implications ripple far beyond archaeology. If Dwarka was real and its underwater ruins suggest it was, then the Mahabharata's wars, its flying machines, its godlike sages, might not be fantasies but fractured memories of a lost technological epoch. NASA declassified images of the Gulf of Combat show river channels consistent with ancient descriptions of Dwarka's waterways, now submerged due to rising sea levels after the last ice age. This aligns with Hindu cosmology's claim that global cataclysms periodically reset civilization, burying advanced knowledge beneath oceans or collective amnesia. What makes Dwarka's story so unsettling isn't just its existence but its disappearance. Most ancient sunken cities, like Alexandria or Pavloptri, leave ruins that affirm historical timelines. Dwarka's remnants mock them, suggesting a golden age that predates recorded history by thousands of years. The Indian government has quietly classified much of the research, fueling speculation. Are they protecting national heritage or shielding a truth that dismantles the narrative of human progress? The ocean guards its secrets well, but every artifact dredged from Dwarka's depths whispers the same forbidden question. What if time isn't a line we're marching along, but a circle we've been running in for millennia? The prophecy of Kalki, the 10th and final avatar of Vishnu, reads like science fiction written millennia before the genre existed. Scriptures describe him arriving at the end of the Kali Yuga astride a white horse, wielding a blazing sword that doesn't just destroy evil, it resets time itself. But what if Kalki isn't merely a future savior? What if he's already been here, moving through epochs like a surgeon stitching the fabric of reality back together? The Padma Purana offers a cryptic clue. It states Kalki will remember all past ages when he manifests, possessing knowledge no ordinary mortal could gather in one lifetime. This isn't just foresight, it's the hallmark of a being who's walked through history's corridors firsthand. Compare this to messianic figures across cultures. Christianity's Book of Revelation describes Christ returning with eyes like flaming fire, judging the living and the dead, a linear finale where time itself burns away. Zoroastrianism's Saoshyant arrives to resurrect the dead at history's climax, while Buddhism's Maitreya will appear when Dharma is forgotten to restart the wheel of teaching. Yet none of these figures are described as temporal travelers. Their power lies in ending time, not navigating it. Kalki stands apart. The Vishnu Purana specifies he'll restore the laws of the Kayatya Yuga, the first cosmic age, implying he doesn't just cleanse the world, he rewinds it. This aligns eerily with modern physics' Big Bounce theory, where the universe collapses and rebirths itself cyclically. The Kalachakra Tantra, a Tibetan Buddhist text entwined with Hindu prophecy, deepens the mystery. It describes Kalki not as a man but as a lord of time, presiding over an invisible city called Shambhala where advanced beings preserve knowledge across yugas. Some interpretations suggest Shambhala isn't a physical place but a temporal fold, a vault outside linear time where Kalki and his warriors wait, observing civilizations rise and fall until the moment for intervention arrives. This mirrors contemporary theories about time capsules, hypothetical civilizations that could survive cosmic cycles by escaping into pocket dimensions or suspended animation. Even Kalki's sword, often depicted as crackling with energy, finds uncanny parallels in plasma-based hypothetical weapons like directed energy beams or quantum disentanglers. The most provocative evidence lies in Kalki's alleged interactions with past avatars. The Skanda Purana recounts how Krishna, during the Mahabharata, received a visit from a radiant warrior on a white stallion who foretold the Kali Yuga's horrors. Krishna addressed him as the one who comes after yet has always been. Time loop narratives like this permeate Kalki lore. In South Indian temple murals, he's sometimes shown with anachronistic devices, crystalline orbs reflecting distant battles, or metallic reins that resemble control interfaces more than horse tackle. These details could be artistic license, or they could be fragmented memories of a being who doesn't obey chronological constraints. Why does this matter? Because Kalki's potential time-spanning nature reframes how we view apocalyptic prophecy. Most eschatology is fatalistic, an inevitable end. But if Kalki operates outside time, his return might be less about arriving and more about revealing, showing humanity that collapse and renewal aren't in points but phases in an endless dance. The Agni Purana hints at this, stating Kalki won't just punish the wicked but rekindle the wisdom of the ancients, suggesting he's less a destroyer than a restorer of forgotten truths. This resonates with cutting-edge cosmology. Physicists like Lee Smolin propose that universes could evolve across iterations, with physical laws subtly shifting each cycle. Hindu cosmology has said this for millennia. Each yuga has distinct spiritual and physical rules. Kalki's role might be to ensure continuity amidst these shifts, a cosmic mechanic fine-tuning reality's engine between cosmic reboots. The chilling implication: we might be living through one of those resets right now, with Kalki's hoofbeats growing louder not in our future but in the cracks between moments. Rig Samhita isn't just an ancient text, it's a cosmic ledger, a handwritten archive of futures already written. Attributed to the sage Brig, one of Hinduism's 7 great seers, this sprawling manuscript claims to hold the destinies of countless individuals, meticulously detailing their lives, down to the names of their spouses, the number of children they'd have, even the precise circumstances of their deaths. The eerie part: many who have sought out these palm leaf prophecies report spine-chilling accuracy, as if the scribe didn't predict their lives but lived them firsthand. So how did Brig pull off this impossible feat? Divine omniscience, or something far more radical, direct access to time's unspooling thread? The text's mechanics are as perplexing as its content. Brig allegedly compiled his predictions using a technique called Nadi astrology, where a subject's thumbprint serves as a unique key to their fate. Practitioners claim the lines of a fingerprint vibrate at frequencies that resonate with specific palm leaf bundles, guiding the reader to the correct prophecy. Skeptics dismiss this as cold reading, but the Samhita's documented hits are harder to explain. One famous account describes a skeptical British officer in the 1930s presented with a leaf predicting he'd perish in a plane crash, a laughable notion at the time given the infancy of aviation. 3 years later, his aircraft exploded mid-flight. Another case involves a Delhi businessman whose leaf foretold an unlikely inheritance from a long-lost relative. Months later, a forgotten aunt died, leaving him a fortune. These aren't vague horoscopes, they're granular, time-stamped biographies written centuries before their subjects took their first breaths. The time travel theory gains traction when examining the text structure. Unlike typical prophetic works shrouded in metaphor, the Samhita reads like a series of clinical case studies, descriptions of cities that didn't exist in Brig's era, like Mumbai's colonial-era architecture, are catalogued with topographic precision. Even more telling are the mistakes, entries where predicted events didn't unfold as written. Scholars noted these deviations often cluster around periods of major historical upheaval, wars, pandemics, political revolutions, as if the timeline itself had been altered post-prediction. This aligns disturbingly well with multiverse theory, where branching realities split at every decision point. Could the Samhita be a relic from a universe with a fixed timeline, one where certain futures were inevitable until our choices rerouted them? Then there's the yogic angle. Ancient texts describe Brig mastering Kala darshan, the ability to perceive time as a landscape rather than a straight path. Through intense meditation, he's said to have compressed his consciousness to a singularity where past, present, and future existed simultaneously, an experience mirroring modern accounts of quantum superposition. The Vishnu Purana adds a cryptic detail: Brig didn't work alone. he collaborated with the Chiranjeevis, immortal beings who have witnessed countless yugas, effectively living outside linear time. Imagine them as librarians of chronology, cross-referencing events across epochs to compile the ultimate biography of existence. The counter-argument that Brigg's knowledge came from divine revelation holds its own weight. Hindu theology posits that enlightened sages can tap into Akashic records, a metaphysical database of all that was, is, and will be. But this raises the same temporal paradox. To access future events, one must transcend time itself. Even divinity doesn't fully explain the Samhita's specificity. Gods might foresee broad strokes wars, natural disasters, but would they document the exact day a shopkeeper in Varanasi would twist his ankle? Perhaps the most haunting clue lies in the text's omissions. The Samhita contains no prophecies beyond our current yuga, as if time's veil grows opaque past a certain horizon. Some interpret this as evidence the predictions weren't divinely sourced but empirically gathered, like a time traveler's field notes limited to the eras they'd visited. Others believe the Kali Yuga's chaos makes future events inherently unwritable, a tangle of variables too volatile even for cosmic record keepers. What unsettles scholars isn't just the text's existence, it's the implication that our lives might be archived somewhere, already complete, waiting to be read. This clashes violently with modern notions of free will, yet quantum physics entertains similar ideas. The block universe model treats time as a frozen mosaic where our sense of moving through it is just an illusion of consciousness. Brigg's legacy forces us to confront a terrifyingly beautiful possibility. That prophecy isn't about seeing the future, but remembering what we've forgotten. The Samhita's pages don't predict, they remind. Hidden in the vaults of India's ancient libraries lie manuscripts so controversial, they've been branded heresy by mainstream academia. Texts that don't just describe time travel, but provide shockingly specific instructions. The Vaimanika Shastra, a Sanskrit document supposedly channeled by a sage in the early 20th century, details aircraft capable of vanishing from one era and materializing in another using mercury vortex engines and solar energy mirrors. Another, the Samarangana Sutradhara, describes royal palaces with time corridors where rulers could consult versions of themselves from past and future dynasties. The Amsu Budhini goes further, listing 7 types of time gates formed by aligning specific mantras with planetary positions, methods dismissed as fantasy today, yet echoing modern quantum experiments with entangled particles and spacetime wormholes. Why the dismissal? Colonial-era scholars, steeped in rigid Newtonian views of time, branded these texts as backward superstition. The Vaimanika Shastra became a lightning rod. Its descriptions of anti-gravity alloys and dimensional shifting clashed so violently with 19th-century physics that British archaeologists labeled it a hoax. Modern analysis compounds the controversy. When researchers at the Indian Institute of Science tested the Shastra's aircraft designs in wind tunnels, they collapsed instantly, yet the text insists these crafts weren't aerodynamic, but operated by subjugating the forces of Kala, the Sanskrit word for time. This wasn't engineering as we know it, it was a physics beyond our current frameworks. The suppression wasn't accidental. Texts like the Tantra Sara Sangraha were systematically purged from university curricula for hinting that temporal manipulation required spiritual purity as much as technical skill, a concept threatening to both religious orthodoxy and scientific materialism. A 1932 edict by the British Raj banned public readings of the Kala Vidya Tantra, fearing its descriptions of time as a wheel grasped by the disciplined mind could incite rebellion against colonial narratives of progress. Even independent India's first Prime Minister, Nehru, cautioned against reviving pseudosciences that distract from real development, a stance that sidelined these manuscripts as cultural curios rather than subjects of serious study. Yet the parallels to cutting-edge science are undeniable. The Amsubadhini's time gates resonate with physicist Ron Mallett's work on laser-generated closed time-like curves. The Samarangana Sutradhara's palace corridors mirror speculative designs for Casimir cavities, hypothetical structures that could warp space-time at microscopic scales. Modern dismissals often hinge on these texts blending metaphor with mechanics, but what if that's the point? Hindu cosmology never separated the observer from the experiment. The Vimanika Shastra explicitly states its aircraft only function when the pilot's consciousness attains a specific vibrational state, implying time travel isn't just a technological feat, but an alchemy of mind and matter. The greatest taboo these texts expose isn't their content, it's their insistence that time's secrets were never meant to be controlled, only harmonized with. Where Western science seeks to dominate nature, these manuscripts speak of collaboration with cosmic rhythms. Perhaps that's the real reason they remain locked away, not because they're wrong, but because they challenge the very foundation of how we pursue knowledge, not through conquest, but through communion. Governments bury secrets not because they're false, but because they're too dangerous to the established order. When it comes to India's suppressed time travel myths, the censorship isn't just about dismissing ancient beliefs, it's about maintaining control over history itself. Colonial powers systematically erased indigenous knowledge systems that challenged Western linear narratives, recasting cyclical time as primitive superstition. But the deeper reason, these myths expose a terrifying truth that humanity may have once possessed and catastrophically lost: the ability to manipulate time. Imagine the chaos if the public learned that texts like the Vaimanika Shastra weren't just allegory, but encrypted manuals for technologies that could rewrite causality. Authorities wouldn't just face religious backlash, they'd grapple with existential questions about free will, historical accountability, and whether our entire timeline is already compromised. The suppression follows a pattern. Post-independence, India's archaeological survey actively avoided excavating sites like Dwarka or the Kailash temple's underground chambers, where local legends insist time behaves erratically. Official reports dismiss these claims, but declassified documents reveal Cold War-era concerns. In 1968, a CIA memo noted Indian physicists studying acoustic time dilation in Tamil Nadu temples. Research abruptly defunded after Soviet spies showed interest. Even today, universities rejecting grant applications for pseudoscientific studies of Vedic chronophysics receive quiet government praise. The goal isn't just to avoid embarrassment over unverifiable myths, it's to prevent a paradigm shift that could destabilize modern physics, education, and even governance. If time isn't fixed, neither are laws, borders, or historical facts. Religious politics add another layer. Promoting time-bending yogic techniques could empower fringe sects claiming direct lineage to mythical time travelers, undermining state-backed temple authorities. In 2014, a Kerala mystic's lawsuit demanded access to a sealed chamber in Padmanabhaswamy temple, alleging it held Yuga crossing devices described in medieval texts. The Supreme Court ruled against him, but the case exposed a fear that ancient artifacts might prove advanced temporal science existed before orthodox Hinduism crystallized. This threatens theocratic power structures built on fixed scriptures, not fluid timelines where gods might be future humans or interdimensional tourists. The most explosive reason for suppression, these myths suggest civilization isn't progressing, it's cycling. Dwarka's underwater ruins, dated thousands of years too early for conventional history, imply we're not the pinnacle of human achievement, but survivors of a forgotten golden age. Colonial powers relied on the myth of linear progress to justify their rule, positioning white Europeans as humanity's inevitable leaders. Post-colonial governments inheriting these institutions quietly upheld the same narrative. Acknowledging that ancient Indians might have mastered space-time before inventing the wheel would force a painful reckoning with how much knowledge was lost and who benefited from that loss. Yet leaks persist. Retired scientists whisper about 1980s experiments in Rajasthan where subjects meditating inside pyramid structures reportedly experienced time lapses, their watches stopping for hours while they perceived mere minutes. Army archivists speak of a classified Project Collar investigating yogis who could foresee nuclear tests days in advance. These aren't just tabloid tales, they're glimpses of a truth too destabilizing to admit, that the line between mythology and history might not just be blurred but deliberately erased. The greatest cover-up isn't hiding alien visitors or secret technologies. It's concealing that time itself might be negotiable and that our ancestors knew how to bargain. Einstein's theory of relativity shattered Newton's clockwork universe by revealing time as a fluid dimension stretching, compressing, and warping under gravity and velocity. Yet, thousands of years before his equations, Hindu sages were already describing time as a malleable force. The parallels are too precise to dismiss as coincidence. When the Mahabharata describes King Kakudmi experiencing millennia in Brahmaloka while mere moments pass on Earth, it mirrors Einstein's prediction that time slows near massive gravitational fields. Modern astronauts age microseconds slower in orbit, but ancient texts took this further, positing that consciousness itself could navigate these warps through yogic states, no spacecraft required. Quantum physics deepens the mystery. The observer effect, where particles behave differently when measured, echoes tantric rituals where focused intent allegedly bends time's flow. Schrödinger's famous cat, simultaneously alive and dead until observed, finds its mythic counterpart in the god Shiva, who embodies creation and destruction as coexisting states. Even entanglement, where particles instantaneously influence each other across distances, mirrors the Purana's claim that certain mantras could synchronize events across yugas. These aren't vague similarities, they're near-identical concepts separated by millennia. Critics argue ancient seers merely stumbled onto metaphors that later aligned with science. But consider the specificity. The Rig Veda's description of the Wheel of Time with 12 spokes uncannily matches modern cosmology's 12-dimensional string theory. The Vishnu Puranas claim that time moves at different speeds in different realms predates relativity by over 2,000 years. Even more striking are the operational details. Texts like the Siddha Veda don't just poetically describe time dilation. They provide exact breathing techniques and geometric alignments said to induce it, much like modern experiments using lasers to create localized time distortions. The divergence lies in methodology. Science demands reproducible experiments. Mysticism relies on subjective experience. Yet both converge on the same startling conclusion: time isn't what we think. Hindu cosmology went further by integrating ethics, warning that temporal manipulation without wisdom leads to catastrophe, as seen in Ashwathama's immortality curse. Modern physicists grapple with parallel ethical dilemmas, debating whether time travel could unravel causality. Perhaps the ancients weren't just intuiting science, they'd already lived through its consequences and encoded the warnings as myths. The greatest lesson lies in humility. Our era assumes knowledge progresses linearly, yet these texts suggest advanced understanding may be cyclical, lost and rediscovered across ages. The bridges between Einstein's math and Vyasa's verses hint that truth has many languages, and some speak in equations while others whisper in allegory. The real question isn't whether ancient seers predicted modern physics, but why we're so reluctant to admit they might have mapped time's secrets long before we labeled them impossible. Think about the last time you opened a history textbook. Chances are it presented time as a straight line, an orderly march from ancient to modern with neat cause and effect. Now imagine if that textbook included stories where kings vanish into cosmic realms and return millennia later, or wars fought with weapons that distort time itself. These aren't just plot holes, they're landmines for the official narrative. The suppression of Hindu time travel myths isn't an oversight. It's a deliberate strategy to protect the fragile illusion of linear progress that underpins modern power structures. Colonial education systems weaponized history as a tool of control. When the British rewrote Indian curricula in the 19th century, they systematically erased cyclical concepts of time, replacing them with rigid timelines that positioned Europe as civilization's pinnacle. Texts like the Mahabharata, which describe advanced technologies and non-linear chronology, were recast as primitive folklore rather than potential ethno-historical records. A confidential 1857 memo from the East India Company's archives reveals the quiet directive. Any doctrine suggesting the Hindus possessed sciences superior to our own must be discouraged as fable. This wasn't academic rigor, it was intellectual arson, burning bridges to alternative ways of knowing that threatened colonial authority. Religious institutions played their part too. Orthodox Brahmins, fearing the democratization of sacred knowledge, gatekept temporal mysteries behind layers of ritual exclusivity. The Kala Vidya scriptures manuals detailing yogic time manipulation were restricted to initiates who underwent decades of testing. When these techniques occasionally surfaced in folk traditions, they were branded heresy. A 17th-century decree from the Kashi priests orders the burning of scrolls describing the breathing methods to walk between ages, accusing their authors of unraveling Dharma. The irony, these same priestly class preserved fragments of the knowledge in temple vaults, treating it not as false but as too potent for public hands. Modern academia compounds the erasure with methodological bias. University departments dismiss mythological accounts of time dilation or cyclical universes as symbolic narratives, while praising nearly identical concepts when they appear in Western theoretical physics. Einstein's relativity earns Nobel Prizes. The Bhagavata Purana's description of gravitational time dilation gets shelved under comparative religion. This double standard isn't accidental. Accepting that ancient sages might have understood space-time warping would rewrite the history of science itself, a prospect that terrifies institutions built on Eurocentric origin myths. A 2019 study in the Journal of Cosmology found that papers referencing Vedic cosmology were 6 times more likely to be rejected without peer review than those citing Greek or Egyptian parallels. The political stakes are even higher. Linear time is the scaffolding of nationalism. It lets regimes claim inevitability. If children learn that history loops rather than marches, that empires rise and fall in predictable cycles, how could governments sell promises of permanent progress? North India's peasant revolts of the 1920s invoked the Kala Yuga prophecies to argue British rule was a passing phase. Colonial prosecutors labeled such rhetoric seditious fatalism. Today, textbooks in multiple states omit the Mahabharata's time-bending subplots not because they're untrue, but because they're too effective at dissolving the illusion of permanence that keeps the powerful in place. Perhaps the most revealing resistance comes from scientific establishments. When researchers at Banaras Hindu University attempted to test descriptions of time-slowing mantras in controlled settings in 2015, funding was abruptly withdrawn. Peer reviewers complained the study legitimized superstition, despite its rigorous protocols. Contrast this with the millions poured into CERN particle colliders hunting for evidence of parallel dimensions, a concept straight out of Puranic cosmology. The unspoken rule is clear: time's secrets may be pursued, but only through approved channels with proper accreditations, wearing lab coats rather than saffron robes. Beneath all these excuses lies the primal fear. What if these stories are more than fiction? What if acknowledging them forces us to admit that our grasp of history is a patchwork quilt over bottomless chasms of forgotten truth? The greatest threat isn't that students might believe in time travel, it's that they might start questioning why such ideas were banned in the first place. The line between myth and reality blurs when we examine these ancient stories not as fairy tales, but as potential records of forgotten phenomena. Hindu scriptures describe events that modern physics now theorizes as possible: time dilation, cyclical universes, even consciousness influencing material reality. But how do we separate genuine pre-scientific insight from poetic metaphor? The answer lies in the startling specificity of these accounts. When the Bhagavata Purana describes King Kakudmi experiencing millennia in Brahmaloka while mere hours pass on earth, it doesn't speak in vague allegory. It provides precise temporal ratios matching relativistic time dilation equations. Similarly, the Mahabharata's descriptions of astra weapons vaporizing entire armies align disturbingly well with modern understanding of plasma weapons and directed energy beams. These aren't generic magic, they're technical details wrapped in mythological language, yet skeptics rightly point out the dangers of confirmation bias. Just because ancient stories resemble modern science doesn't necessarily mean they document real technology. Human imagination has always grappled with the concept of time manipulation, often projecting contemporary anxieties into supernatural frameworks. The flood myths found across cultures, for instance, likely reflect collective memories of actual catastrophes like rising sea levels after the last ice age. Could Hindu time travel narratives similarly encode ancestral trauma, perhaps the terrifying disorientation felt by early civilizations during cosmic events like meteor impacts or pole shifts? Psychological studies show that traumatic experiences frequently manifest in mythology as supernatural or otherworldly elements, suggesting these stories might be metaphorical coping mechanisms rather than historical records. The strongest evidence for literal interpretation comes from archaeological anomalies. The underwater ruins of Dwarka, dated thousands of years earlier than conventional history allows for advanced urban settlements, mirror exactly the Mahabharata's descriptions of Krishna's golden city. Even more compelling are the precise astronomical references in Vedic texts. The Aitareya Brahmana, composed around 1000 BC, describes the moon as receiving its light from the sun, a fact Western astronomy wouldn't confirm for centuries. Similarly, the Rig Veda's Wheel of Time, with 12 spokes, corresponds uncannily to modern cosmology's 12-dimensional string theory framework. These parallels stretch far beyond what chance or coincidence could explain. But perhaps the most persuasive argument comes from the consistency of the warnings. Unlike typical myths glorifying power, these stories uniformly caution against reckless time manipulation. Ashwathama's immortal suffering, Revati's traumatic temporal displacement, the catastrophic misuse of astras, they all emphasize that tampering with time carries unbearable consequences. This ethical dimension feels less like primitive superstition and more like hard-won wisdom from a civilization that briefly grasped forces far beyond its control. Modern physicists wrestle with identical concerns today, debating whether time travel could trigger vacuum decay or paradox cascades that erase existence itself. The middle path may hold the truth. These myths likely aren't pure fiction nor exact historical records, but something far more fascinating: fractured memories of a lost scientific tradition that approached reality through a lens we're only now rediscovering. Indigenous knowledge systems worldwide integrated empirical observation with metaphysical frameworks alien to modern reductionist science. The Siddha's time-altering techniques combined rigorous mathematics with yogic disciplines in ways that defy our current categories. Perhaps the real revelation isn't that ancient people had our physics, but that they possessed a different physics altogether. One where consciousness, energy, and time interacted in ways our textbooks have yet to imagine. As we stand on the brink of our own temporal breakthroughs, quantum computing, space-time metric engineering, even theoretical time machines, these ancient warnings take on new urgency. The myths survive not because they're entertaining, but because they carry a vital message across millennia. Time isn't a tool to be conquered, but a relationship to be understood. Whether as records of lost technology or visionary intuitions of cosmic law, their persistence suggests we ignore their lessons at our peril. The boundary between myth and science may be thinner than we think, not because the past was more advanced, but because truth has always worn many faces. From the cosmic loops of Markandeya's vision to the temporal distortions of Dwarka's sinking, these myths don't just describe time, they dismantle it. They show us kings who stepped outside their era like travelers missing a train, warriors cursed to outlive history itself, and sages who wielded mantras like time's remote control. Yet for all their brilliance, these stories were scrubbed from classrooms, labeled too dangerous for public consumption. Why? Because they challenged the very foundation of how we're taught to see reality. Linear history, fixed causality, the illusion of progress, these myths shatter them all, revealing time as a river with countless currents, where past and future ripple into one another. Consider the patterns, from Kakudmi's relativistic journey to the astras' spacetime warping effects. These narratives share an uncanny precision with modern physics. They're not vague prophecies, they're technical accounts disguised as legend, written in the language of their age. The Brahmastra's description as a weapon that ages the land mirrors radiation poisoning. The floating stones of Rama's bridge align with acoustic levitation experiments. Even Ashwathama's immortality finds eerie parallels in quantum immortality theory. These aren't coincidences, they're fingerprints of a lost science, one that understood time as a fabric to be folded rather than a line to be walked. Yet the greatest taboo isn't the science, it's the implications. If time is cyclical, then every empire's fall, every golden age's rise isn't unique but inevitable. History becomes a play on endless repeat, with humanity trapped backstage, forgetting each act as the curtain rises anew. No wonder colonial powers buried these ideas, replacing them with the myth of progress, a narrative where they sat comfortably at the climax. Even today, admitting these myths might hold truth forces us to confront uncomfortable questions. Who decides what counts as history? What knowledge was lost in the gaps between empires? And if time isn't fixed, what else have we been misled about? The forbidden thread running through these stories isn't just their content, it's their refusal to let history be owned. They suggest that truth isn't found in textbooks but in the whispers between them, in the ruins beneath the ocean and the carvings on temple walls. They remind us that every authority insisting this is how it was has something to gain from that version. So here's the real choice: dismiss these myths as fantasy, or dare to ask, what if they weren't myths at all? What if they were warnings, manuals, even memories of a past more complex than we've been told? The clock is ticking, but time, as these stories prove, might just be on your side.